Hey, what's going on, scholars? It's your professor here, Enlightened Enlisted, and today we have the Enlisted roadmap for 2023. Now, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and hopes for this roadmap and talk about some stuff that I don't think a lot of other content creators are covering. So let's get into this. All right, so we got this roadmap pulled up here, and the first thing I noticed right off the bat looking at it is these are divided into 4 quadrants here because you just still have the same stuff, the new Battle Pass season, several big events, and you have these 4 times, right? Now, if you guys don't know, businesses do things in 4 quarters throughout the year. So you have the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So we can kind of take that this is where we are at in the first quarter going into 2023. So looking at that, we can expect new classes with unique mechanics, a new battlefield in Normandy, which is always great. I talked about that in other videos about how we need new levels. And then you have something that's hidden right here that's kind of blown apart. It looks like, I can't think it's announcement because there is no T at the end of here. Announce, maybe? We don't really know because this wall is blown apart, so it's kind of hiding some stuff. Then obviously we have the new Battle Pass season and several big events. Now, I'll also talk about this MG right here and how that could be giving us an idea of what the next campaign is going to be, as well as the background here later in the video. All right, jumping into Q1 here, as we talked about the new class with unique mechanics, I think it's just going to be 1 because it says class, that is singular, not plural. So I kind of wrote down some of the, classes that I thought could be added to this game and what their mechanics might be. Now, this is obviously just complete speculation on my part. I have no idea what they actually are. But the first one I came up with was squad leader, commissars, or / an officer. And I think they could be able to inspire troops around you, maybe give ammo, and they come automatically with binoculars. Now, the only thing that would be weird about this is usually officers don't run around in a group of, 5 to 10 guys. They're usually in charge of a squad, so I might not be correct in that, but it would be kind of cool to see an NKVD or, some bonsai charges being inspired by officer classes. The next one I came up with was FO, aka a forward observer. Now, I just think they're going to be very basic, so I really doubt this is going to be one of them, but if they are, it's probably going to be making, mortar fire or the radio operator artillery more accurate. Now, these last 2 are ones that I really hope actually make it into the game, but they could be kind of OP. So for the first one, I have commandos / partisans. Now, if you didn't know, there was a lot of commando forces used in World War II. You also have a lot of resistance organizations, such as the French resistance or the Polish resistance. And, of course, the Russians obviously had a lot of partisans that were behind the lines, just wrecking the German supply trucks. Now, for these guys, I think what they're going to be able to do is go into the gray zone for longer periods of time and maybe have access to, some suppressed weapons like we saw in one of the events where you have the Germans with the suppressed MP40 and then you have the SES guys in Tunisia with the suppressed Stins. I think now they might be adding it to where everyone can have access to those things. And the last one I came up with is probably going to be the most OP if they do actually add it in the way I'm thinking, but I'm going with Pathfinders / Airborne. Now, if you have a Pathfinder or an airborne unit, what that would basically allow you to do is if you put a beacon down and then you die, you can spawn on that beacon instantly with multiple squads. So if you and your buddy are both going in with an airborne squad, you can spawn on that beacon at the same time. That would allow you guys to pretty much just bum rush general points, and I think that might be a little bit too OP because I could see a lot of guys, if you got a 4-man death stack and you had them in your lineup, just being able to bum rush a point, but we'll see. Now, the question with that is, are they going to be based off of the squad? Because we already have the 101st and the 82nd Airborne in the game for the Normandy campaign, but they're not paratroopers or anything like that. So I don't really know how that's going to work. I kind of do hope that they kind of move the squads that you have in game more towards the premium squads are, where basically they're all MGs with an engineer that has an MG versus how we have them right now with these kind of mixed squads. I know that kind of makes it really interesting because you could have a sniper with an LMG, with an engineer, with an assaulter, all in one squad. But generally speaking, right now, the AI squad mates you have are kind of just meat bags that you just spawn into after you're killed. So it would be kind of interesting to see if we could get a more unique, restricted squad lineups. That way, it kind of depends on how you play and what squad you bring in. Now, if they stick to the old system that they currently have, most likely we're going to see some kind of squad leaders that I talked about earlier. All right, on to the second point, the new battlefield in the Normandy campaign. Now, this is obviously still for Q1. I think it's going to be the battlefield of Caen, and the reason why I think it's going to be the battlefield of Caen is the airfield in Caen, and we're already seeing the British forces in the Normandy campaign. Now, if it is the battlefield of Caen, it's going to be really awesome because that's very urban fighting between the British and the German forces. We saw a lot of panzer forces fought there. There was the Tiger, obviously. We could see the Sherman Firefly making an appearance. And I think it's going to be a really well-rounded battlefield for the Normandy campaign. Now moving on to the second part. This is going to be for Q2. So this is going to be like April, May, and June of this year. We are going to see some major UI upgrades. Now, I am kind of sad to see this in Q2 and not in Q1, like I said. But I do think that is good that they put this into the roadmap itself. New progression system. This is something that is absolutely huge. I'm not surprised that this is pushed off to Q2, but I'll go into that here in a little bit. New battlefield in the Pacific. So we're seeing more levels added to the Pacific campaign, which is always good, like we saw with the Normandy campaign in Q1. New types of aircraft and weapons. I'll get into that in a little bit, my thoughts on that. And of course, we have the standard new Battle Pass season, several big events. All right, so we're now in Q2, and the first point is the major UI upgrade. Now, this has been something that has plagued Enlisted since its launch, and that is because the UI is just kind of overbearing. It's really hard for newer players to kind of navigate, and it's just not user-friendly, really. Now, we've seen a lot of updates to the UI. We had the Academy way back. If you guys are an Enlisted Pro, you guys remember that. That went away. We're seeing it where you can buy, weapons and stuff in mass now, which is great. I do think they're going to be able to add it where you can send troops to the rear in mass again. And hopefully they're going to add it where you can disassemble weapons in mass, because that's really annoying. I do think the economy system is still kind of clunky. You got your bronze weapon orders, your silver weapons orders, your gold weapon orders, and you can't really go in between the three. Like, I think that a gold weapon order should be like 100 bronze weapon orders or something, and 20 silver weapon orders, however you want to cut it down. It would be nice to have it where you could kind of trade in X amount for, something else. Another major, UI upgrade that I'm really hoping for is just a join any campaign on random team quick start. That would be super great to have. Plus, they really need to rework the custom side of things, because just finding a custom match is just near impossible for me. They're never filled. They're just super kind of clunky when you're trying to join them, and they're kind of hidden off into just this little random banner spot right now. So it's really hard for you to find it. All right, this might be the biggest point for Enlisted, and that is going to be the new progression system. Now, however they set this up, we don't know right now, but I'm really hoping that it is based off the armies. So what I mean by that is, if you're grinding out the Germans, it doesn't matter if you're playing Tunisia, Normandy, or the Moscow campaign, you're going to have the same amount of progression between all three of those. Now, they could obviously break up the Germans based off of fronts or, years. Same can go for the Russians. I've talked about this in other videos, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but a new progression system is key to the success for Enlisted. And I'm really shocked, like I said earlier, that they are doing this in Q2. I'm happy they're doing it in Q2. I just hope they've taken the time to really work this out, because if they don't do this right, Enlisted is in a lot of trouble. Because let's be honest, guys, if you're a free-to-play player, the grind is just way too long. Even if you're a premium player, the grind is almost unbearable. And I think they have to figure out a way to maintain those free-to-play players so they can keep these premium players coming. I really can't stress to you guys how important this point is for the roadmap, because later on we're seeing that they're adding at least one new campaign, maybe two, and if they don't have the progression in order, oh my god, the player base splitting will be just unbearable, and I think you're going to see a mass exodus. All right, now on to our third point. We have the new battlefield in the Pacific. Now, I'm 100% going to say this is Iwo Jima. It's just too iconic for them to pass up. I mean, Mount Suribachi, all that kind of stuff. It would just be shocking to me if they do not add this into the game. All right, the last point for Q2 is new types of aircraft weapons. Now, this is really interesting to me because we already have bombs, rockets, cannons, machine guns, the normal stuff that you see on the planes today. And I'm not really sure what they're going to be adding. I hope to God they're not going to be adding like napalm or like Willy Peep bombings. That would be just broken, and I would just hate my life even more. It would be really cool to see the Hedgehog for the Soviets come into it with all the PPSHs on the bottom, although that thing is just going to be an AC-130 from space, so I hope to God they don't add it just for my sheer sanity in Moscow and Stalingrad. I'm going to say most likely this is just going to be airplanes being able to customize their loadouts so you can, bring in ground belts instead of air belts if you're familiar with War Thunder Air RB. And hopefully we're seeing some kind of payload customization for each aircraft, obviously affecting its performance in game. Now, Q2 is going to be a huge year for Enlisted. It sounds like they've got their plates full, but Q3 looks massive here. So let's kind of go the general overview on it before we get into our in-depth as we have been doing. So the OBT is over and the release of Enlisted. Now that is crazy to think that OBT would be over. We've been in OBT now for almost 3 years. So that is nice to see that they are going to say, hey, look, we're going to fix all the issues. This is going to be a full-fledged release game. That is actually quicker than War Thunder, if you guys didn't know. So that is pretty good to see. Now, it does say launched on, and of course, it's got that knocked off there. Now, it's going to be in Q3, so we can kind of determine around roughly when that's going to be, right before going into the holiday seasons. So that would be kind of an interesting launch date. We'll see if that means they'll launch it on Steam, maybe. We're hoping they do. I've always been saying that I want this game on Steam, but I'll go into that a little bit in a bit. New campaign in a new format. Now, this will be interesting to see because we did have that stuff from KO Fox saying that they were going to address the player-based splitting, and we'll go into that because they do talk about this at the very bottom here as well. But it will be interesting to see, and we'll go into that here in a bit. Now, we do have something that is blown out, so we have literally no idea what that could possibly be. They could have just left this blank because they want to add another goal for Q3. I doubt it. I think they have something in mind already. They just don't want to tell us, and that's kind of understandable there. Then, of course, your standard new Battle Pass season and several big events. All right, so Q3 is very interesting. You have OBT is over and the release of Enlisted. Now, for me, this isn't a really big point because to me, honestly, I've said it 100 times and I'll continue to say it. Enlisted is already 100% released. OBT is just kind of a cover that the developers can say like, hey, look, we're still working on the game. It's not finished yet. It's an OBT. It's just kind of an excuse, really. However, it does tie in pretty closely to point number 2. Now, all we have is launched on, and then it's just blown out of the wall. I really, really think this means they're going to launch the game on Steam. I know there's been a lot of pushback from the company saying, hey, we don't want to launch it on Steam. I know Gaijin has a very bad relationship with Steam, but let's think about it here. They're going to release the game fully. They're going to have a new progression system already laid out going into Q3 for the game. They're going to say it's no longer an OBT. Now is the perfect time for them to launch it on Steam. Let's also not forget that if you look inside the Enlisted files, there is the ability for it to be added to Steam, and it's still in there. Now, I could be completely wrong, and I have been wrong before. This could just be the date that it actually launches out of OBT. I really hope I am right, though, this time, because just Steam is going to bring in so many new players to the game. All right, the last point that we can actually see for Q3 is a new campaign in a new format. Now, this is going to be a hot topic that a lot of people are going to be talking about on the forums, on Reddit, and I think we can just start with what we know it's probably not going to be. So what we can say with pretty much 100% certainty is it's not going to be on the Eastern Front. It's not going to be Germany versus Russia, at least, because there's just too many of those campaigns in the game already. So I think you could possibly see a winter war, but I highly doubt it. And I think it's going to be more either in a early war France or it's going to be somewhere in the Pacific again. Personally, I think it's going to be in the Pacific. I think they've already kind of developed that kind of campaign, and I think that's kind of the direction that they were going into 2023 with. But I do think that the background of this actual roadmap could give us some insight of what possibly the other campaign could be. Now, Q4 is a little bit different here. It's a little lackluster, but I kind of expect that, and I think you should too, because projecting almost a year out is very hard for any company to do. let alone a development studio. So you have a new campaign in a new format. Now, these are repeats, so I don't really know if that means we're going to have 2 new campaigns in 2023. I highly doubt that. That is a big workload. I wonder if this is something to do where they're connected to each other. Like this is the CBT release of the campaign, and this is the OBT release of said campaign. We'll see. We've seen that before with like Berlin, Tunisia, Stalingrad as well. We didn't see that with, some of the other campaigns like the Pacific, which I kind of like. New types of ground vehicles with unique mechanics. I don't really care about this. I'm not a big ground vehicle kind of guy. As I've said in many, many other videos, I think that the ground vehicles are almost too OP now for the infantry-based combat, and I hope that they are focusing on infantry-based combat in 2023. There's not a lot of mentions of that here, and that is a big concern of mine, so we'll see. Then we have something that is blown out here. We can't tell what that is. Again, probably just to do with some stuff that they want to tease later on, or they don't have any kind of idea. And then the standard new Battle Pass season and several big events. So you're going to have 4 Battle Pass seasons. You can tell that they talked about that in other dev releases, that they are going to be doing less Battle Passes that are going to be bigger. And now we have several big events. I'm sure there'll still be the small events in there, and this shouldn't change, really. I don't think the events are going to change too dramatically, but we'll see. And then obviously in here, they said they included the greater goals, keeping with artificial intelligence. So we saw that with the major UI upgrade. Then we saw soldiers' animations. That's been something that I've been kind of saying. The animations are pretty weak. They've been talking about that for a while. The animations are pretty weak in this game. Damage modifier armored vehicles and aircraft, they've already started to solve some of those issues. Thank God. If we all remember when they broke HE, where the Stuart could frontally pin a Tiger with the HE, they fixed that. And they're definitely testing some stuff out, so that's pretty good. And they are going to be telling us about the new progression system in the near future in a series of dev vlogs. So that'll be really interesting to see that they're already going to be talking about the new progression system for Q2 here in the next few days, it sounds like. All right, welcome to Q4. Now, we have a new campaign and a new format, just starting it right off the bat. Now, if they do actually do it where it's a brand new campaign, not a CBT to an OBT for the same campaign, which I think they may or may not be doing. It's always hard to tell with Darkflow's releases. If it is a brand new campaign that is different from the one in Q3, it is going to be either in France or it'll be in Italy. And that's just judging from the background and the machine gun that is in the roadmap photo. And then lastly, we have new types of ground vehicles with unique mechanics. Honestly, I don't really care about this. I think it's SPAA, maybe some half tracks. Again, not a big fan of all the ground vehicles, air vehicles being added to this game, because to me, Enlisted is an infantry-based game. And sadly, that is something we're not seeing a lot in this roadmap. We really only have a few things. You have the new class with unique mechanics being added. You have artificial intelligence of soldiers being buffed and animations. There's nothing really talking about, hey, we're trying to make it better for the infantry with their interactions with these vehicles. I said it in my last video, 2023 is going to be a make or break year for Enlisted, at least for me personally. And I'm really excited to see how they implement all this stuff on the roadmap. Communication has gotten significantly better from the devs, from the community managers, and really I think we could have a great year here in 2023. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as it does help me with the YouTube algorithm. As always, scholars, hit those books and hit those bottles. Cheers.